Okay, let's unpack this. Few events in Western history have quite the visceral power and, the sheer symbolic staying power of the powder treason.
Or the Gunpowder Plot, as most people know it today.
Exactly. We're diving deep into November 5th, 1605. I mean, this date was set for the literal annihilation, just boom, of the entire Protestant establishment in England.
We're talking King James I, the Queen, the Prince of Wales, the whole House of Lords, bishops, judges, everyone wiped out in one go.
It's just staggering to think about.
It really is. And it stands as this stark monument, doesn't it, to political failure, religious zealotry, all of it.
On the surface, it seems straightforward, right? Plot fails, conspirators caught, end of story.
But it's so much more complex when you peel back the layers, which is what we aim to do. We've got sources letting us explore the anatomy of this treason.
Looking at it as a sort of masterclass in state oppression, the psychology driving that kind of violence.
And the government's response, too. The intelligence strategy, the calculation involved, it's fascinating.
So our mission today is pretty comprehensive. We're looking at the sources detailing the suffocating legal backdrop that pushed these men to such extremes.
The nitty-gritty logistics of setting the trap, how they actually plan to do it.
Then the government's countermoves, which you mentioned, were like pure political theater.
Absolutely. And the brutal fallout, the reckoning.
And maybe the most surprising part, how this symbol of, utter failure morphed over centuries into this global icon of rebellion we see today.
It's an incredible journey for a symbol.
So let's start right at the beginning. What was going on? What was life actually like for Catholics in England that led a group of, pretty well-off gentry to decide mass murder was their only option?
Yeah, to really get the motivation, you have to picture early 17th century England as essentially a kingdom built on fear and whispers, especially if you were part of the Catholic minority.
Our sources really paint a picture, don't they? Faith is a kind of fugitive existence.
Precisely. Ever since Queen Elizabeth I, being Catholic basically meant being under suspicion. Loyalty to Rome was automatically equated with treason. You were perpetually hunted, in a way.
And this wasn't just a vague threat. It was built into their homes. We hear about priest holes.
Right, but we need to understand what they really signified. These weren't, quirky historical features. They were tiny, dark, terrifyingly cramped spaces.
Hidden behind walls, under floors, sometimes in chimneys.
Designed out of sheer desperation just to allow someone to practice their faith, to hide a priest. Because harboring a priest, that was a capital offense.
For the priest and the person hiding him.
Both. So imagine living with that constant gnawing anxiety. The sheriff could turn up any minute, and your life depended on keeping that secret. It's an incredible psychological burden.
Beyond the fear of the knock on the door, the state was using money, wasn't it? Systematic financial pressure.
Oh, absolutely. The recusancy laws were basically economic warfare. The Mass itself, the core Catholic service, totally banned.
But the real weapon was forcing them to attend Protestant services.
That was the engine of it, yeah. Mandatory attendance at the Church of England. If you didn't go, if you were a recusant, you got fined.
For ordinary people, that was, 12 pence a week? Still a drain.
A persistent drain, exactly. But the state's real target, the ones they wanted to break, were the Catholic gentry, landowners, people like Robert Catesby himself.
And for them, the fines were just astronomical.
Staggering. We're talking £20 a month. Now, you have to remember, sources suggest an average worker might earn £5, maybe £10 in an entire year.
So £20 a month, it's designed to bankrupt them.
Utterly. Equivalent to tens, maybe hundreds of thousands in today's money, month after month. It was a systematic stripping away of their economic power, their status.
And if they couldn't find the money?
Then the state could step in and seize 2/3 of their land, their entire estate. This wasn't just a tax, it was a mechanism for dismantling families, erasing their history, their influence.
There's that story about Lord Vaux.
Yeah, Lord Vaux of Harrodon, forced to pawn his official parliamentary robes, his symbols of status, just to try and meet the state's demands. It shows the desperation. Their whole identity was being pulled apart.
And it wasn't just financial ruin. They were shut out of public life, too, right? The oath of supremacy.
Exactly. You had to swear the monarch was the supreme head of the church. If you were Catholic, you couldn't do that in good conscience.
So no government jobs, no military career, no law, no university.
Nothing. Completely disenfranchised in their own country. So you end up with this simmering group of well-educated, well-connected men from powerful families.
Watching their inheritance disappear, their futures blocked.
And their faith condemned as treason. They felt trapped with nowhere left to turn.
Okay, so that's the backdrop. A pressure cooker. Then Queen Elizabeth I dies in March 1603, and suddenly there's this tantalizing flicker of hope, as our sources put it.
Yeah, and you can see why they felt hopeful. The incoming king, James VI of Scotland, soon to be James I of England, had connections.
He was the son of Mary, Queen of Scots.
A Catholic martyr in their eyes, yeah. And James's own wife, Anne of Denmark, was known to be Catholic, or at least very sympathetic.
So the Catholic community thought, okay, finally, maybe some tolerance, maybe an easing of these awful laws. They'd shown loyalty now, perhaps?
They expected some kind of relief, exactly, a path towards coexistence.
But James, well, he had other priorities, didn't he?
He was a pragmatist, yes, but more than that, he was a Protestant king, taking over a firmly Protestant nation. He was nervous, needed to consolidate power.
So he kept all of Elizabeth's harsh laws on the books.
He did. And then, in early 1604, he didn't just disappoint them, he actively crushed that hope. He went public.
Declared he detested the Catholic faith.
And, crucially, ordered all Jesuit and Catholic priests out of the country. Expelled.
Wow, so that wasn't just letting them down gently, that was a declaration of hostility.
It was the final straw for many. If we connect this to the bigger picture,
yeah,
this wasn't just disappointment, it felt like a fundamental betrayal.
The extinguishing of any possibility of peaceful change or gradual reform. They tried lying low, they'd hoped for a sympathetic ear. Now the new king himself slams the door shut.
And that sense of utter hopelessness, the feeling that the system itself was rigged against them, that peaceful means were exhausted, that's the fertile ground where the idea of, well, radical, violent action could finally take root.
The time for whispers was over.
The time for gunpowder had arrived in their minds.
And the man who really channels this desperation into a concrete, terrifying plan is Robert Catesby, the mastermind.
Catesby is such a key figure. He wasn't just some fringe radical. He was from the heart of the Catholic gentry. Intelligent, known to be very charismatic, handsome.
Commanded real loyalty.
Fierce loyalty, almost fanatical. And his family background, the Catesbys, the Throckmortons, these were prominent Catholic families who had suffered directly.
His own father had been imprisoned, fined heavily.
Exactly. So Catesby's radicalism wasn't theoretical. It was born from seeing his own family punished for their faith. It was deeply personal.
And he'd already tasted rebellion, hadn't he, with the Essex plot?
He had. He joined the Earl of Essex's failed uprising in 1601. He got away with his life, unlike Essex, but he was hit with a massive £3,000 fine.
Which forced him to sell Chastleton, his ancestral home.
Right. And losing that estate, for a man of his lineage and pride, wasn't just about the money. It was a public humiliation, a stripping away of his honor, his place in the world.
That must have pushed him further towards extremism.
It seems to have cemented it. By 1604, after James's betrayal, Catesby was described as brooding, volatile. When his friend Thomas Percy talked about maybe assassinating the king,
Catesby apparently said he was thinking bigger.
Yes, something like thinking of a most sure way. His vision was total. It wasn't just about killing the king. It was about obliterating the entire Protestant power structure.
Lords, commons, bishops, judges. Everyone in that building on that day.
A cleansing vengeance, as some sources put it.
A fantasy of complete annihilation, hoping to trigger chaos from which a Catholic England could rise. But Catesby, for all his vision and charisma, wasn't an explosives expert. He needed someone with practical skills.
He needed a specialist, a professional operative, and that's where Guy Fawkes comes in. Or Guido, as he sometimes styled himself.
Fawkes is the odd one out in the group, isn't he?
He really is. Born Protestant in Yorkshire, converts to Catholicism probably in his late teens after his father died. And his conversion seems to have been total.
He sells his inheritance?
Sells his small estate at 21, leaves England entirely, and goes to fight for Catholic Spain and the Netherlands in the 80 Years' War.
So he's a true believer, fighting in what he saw as a holy war.
Absolutely. He wasn't just drifting, he was committed. Rose to the rank of alferez, a junior officer. Gained a reputation for courage, piety.
And crucially, for expertise with explosives and siege warfare.
Exactly the skills Catesby lacked. Thomas Wintour, Catesby's cousin, sought Fawkes out specifically for that reason.
And Fawkes' profile, described as tall, powerfully built, capable in argument, devout.
But also importantly, an outsider. He'd been living abroad for years.
Why was that outsider status so key?
Think about it. Catesby, the Wintours, the Wrights, they were all part of the English gentry network. They had family, friends, connections. Even among the Protestants they aimed to kill. There were inherent conflicts.
But Fawkes didn't have those ties.
Not in the same way. He was detached. His loyalty was primarily to the cause, to the Catholic faith, and maybe to Catesby, who brought him into this inner circle. He could focus on the mechanics of the job without those personal complications or divided loyalties. He was the technician.
Okay, so the team is assembling, Catesby the visionary, Fawkes the specialist. Now, the actual commitment, the point of no return, May 20th, 1604, at the Duck and Drake Inn.
Yes, this meeting is critical. The core five are there. Catesby, Thomas Wintour, John Wright, Thomas Percy, and Guy Fawkes.
And they swear an oath.
A very solemn oath, according to the sources, sworn on a prayer book, pledging absolute secrecy. It's a political pact binding them together in treason.
But then something else happens immediately afterwards, something that shifts the psychology of it all.
Right. Straight after taking this oath of secrecy and treason, they receive Holy Communion together from Father John Gerard, a Jesuit priest.
Now, the sources say Gerard didn't know the specifics of their murderous plan.
They're careful to state that yes, whether he suspected anything is another matter, but for the plotters themselves, that act of taking communion right after the oath, it was transformative.
How so?
It fused their political conspiracy with religious ritual. It psychologically reframed what they were planning, mass murder, into something they could see as, well, a divinely sanctioned mission, a holy duty.
So in their minds, they weren't just traitors anymore. They were instruments of God's will.
That's the dangerous justification they seemed to embrace. It gave them a sense of righteous purpose, however warped.
Okay, pact sealed, consciences, rationalize. Now the practicalities, the logistics of setting this massive trap. And their first attempt was not exactly smooth sailing.
Not at all. It was almost comically disastrous in hindsight. Their initial plan was to rent a house right next to the House of Lords.
And dig a tunnel right under the chamber.
Yeah. Problem was, they were gentlemen. They weren't miners. Digging through thick medieval foundation walls is back-breaking, easy work.
Imagine Catesby and Fawkes, chipping away with pickaxes.
Sweating, probably cursing. It was slow, loud, incredibly risky. By March 1605, months into it, they'd barely made a dent. They were getting nowhere.
And then a massive stroke of luck.
Yeah.
Or what they probably saw as Providence intervening.
Exactly. They suddenly discovered that a ground floor undercroft, basically a large cellar or storage area directly beneath the House of Lords chamber itself, was available to lease.
Unbelievable.
It really was. Thomas Percy, using his connections and status as a gentleman pensioner, managed to secure the lease. Just like that.
So forget the tunnel. They just got handed the perfect space.
Overnight, the digging stopped. They now had this ready-made cavity right under their target.
And into this space, they start moving the gunpowder. 36 barrels.
Which is estimated to be around 1.5 tons of gunpowder, a colossal amount.
How did they even get it there?
Carefully. Ferried across the River Thames, probably at night, bit by bit, then hidden inside the cellar under a huge pile of firewood and coal to make it look like ordinary fuel storage.
And Guy Fawkes becomes the caretaker.
He's installed there under the alias John Johnson, posing as Percy's servant. He's literally living on top of the bomb, the solitary watchman, waiting for the signal.
But Parliament keeps getting delayed. The state opening was meant to be much earlier, wasn't it?
Yes, originally scheduled for February 1605, but outbreaks of the bubonic plague in London forced postponements. It kept getting pushed back, finally settling on November 5th.
That long delay must have been nerve-wracking.
Extremely. Months of waiting, maintaining cover stories, living with that constant tension.
And it created practical problems too, didn't it, with the powder?
It did. The cellar was apparently quite damp. There were concerns the original powder might have spoiled or lost its potency over those extra months.
So Fawkes had to get more.
He had to procure fresh, effective powder discreetly, adding another layer of risk, another chance for someone to notice something suspicious. The delay stretched them thin and fatally increased the chances of a leak.
And the leak, when it finally came, wasn't from spoiled powder or loose talk, but from inside the group itself, driven by money troubles again.
Exactly. Catesby needed more funds to support the plotters and plan for the aftermath, the uprising they hoped would follow. So he brought in more recruits late in the game.
Including his own cousin, Francis Tresham.
Right. Tresham had recently inherited a fortune, which made him useful, but Tresham had a problem.
He realized the blast wouldn't just kill Protestants.
He realized it would kill Catholic nobles too, including two of his own brothers-in-law, Lord Stourton and, crucially, Lord Monteagle. He was horrified by this indiscriminate slaughter.
So he pleaded with Catesby, didn't he? To warn them somehow.
He did. He begged Catesby to find a way to get the Catholic peers out of the chamber on the day.
And Catesby's response tells you everything about his mindset by this point.
Absolutely chilling. Catesby flatly refused. His reported words were something like, "The innocent must perish with the guilty sooner than ruin the chances of success."
Total commitment. No compromise.
For Catesby, the mission was absolute. Any deviation risked everything. But for Tresham, the human cost, the thought of his own family members being killed, it was clearly unbearable.
And this internal conflict leads directly to the pivotal moment, the famous Monteagle Letter, delivered just 10 days before the planned attack, October 26, 1605.
Yes, handed to one of Lord Monteagle's footmen in the street by an unknown man. An anonymous, unsigned letter.
Cryptic wording, wasn't it?
Very, advising Monteagle, as you tender your life, to find some excuse not to attend Parliament, for they shall receive a terrible blow, but deliberately vague. No names, no specifics about gunpowder.
And it told Monteagle to burn the letter after reading it.
Which is exactly what he didn't do. Instead, he immediately rode to Whitehall, the center of government.
And handed it straight to Robert Cecil, the Earl of Salisbury, the King's Chief Minister, Secretary of State.
The most powerful man in the country, effectively. And a master of intelligence. Monteagle's decision sealed the plot's fate. But the question that's fascinated historians ever since is, who actually wrote that letter?
Let's look at the main theories the sources suggest. The most obvious suspect is Tresham, right?
He's the prime candidate. He had the motive saving his brothers-in-law without explicitly betraying the plot. Catesby and Wintour certainly suspected him straight away.
But he denied it.
Vehemently. Managed to convince them he was innocent, but he was arrested later and conveniently died in the Tower of London shortly after, possibly from illness, possibly silenced. So we can't know for sure from him.
Okay. Possibility 2. Lord Monteagle himself wrote it, or arranged for it to be written.
This is plausible too. Monteagle had Catholic sympathies, maybe even some inkling of the plot brewing if he sensed it was going wrong or getting too big and likely to be discovered.
And discovering the letter himself is the perfect way out.
It's a brilliant move, politically. He gets to play the loyal subject, warning the king, saving the day. It immediately repairs his somewhat suspect reputation and earns him favor, rewards, a pension, which is exactly what happened.
So self-preservation and proving loyalty. Makes sense. But then there's the third theory, the really intriguing one. Robert Cecil.
The spy master himself. This is the tantalizing possibility, as one source puts it. Cecil inherited Elizabeth I's intelligence network and refined it. He had spies everywhere, especially watching disgruntled Catholics.
Is it really believable that a plot this big involving known agitators and tons of gunpowder was completely off his radar?
It stretches credulity, doesn't it? Cecil was ruthless and incredibly well-informed, so the theory goes, maybe he knew something was up, maybe not all the details, but enough.
So why the letter? Why not just round them up quietly if he suspected something?
Because Cecil wasn't just interested in stopping a plot. He was interested in political theater. Arresting them early might compromise the spies and only yield limited proof.
But the letter?
The letter achieves multiple goals for Cecil. First, it forces Monteagle's hand, tests his loyalty, brings him firmly onto the government side. Second, it creates a public providential narrative for how the plot was discovered, a mysterious warning, not grubby informant work.
And third, and most importantly,
it allows Cecil to control the timing and the reveal, maximizing the political impact. He needed a spectacular public discovery.
This is where it gets really interesting, as you said. Cecil gets the letter on October 26th, but he doesn't immediately raise the alarm.
No, he waits. He holds on to it until King James returns to London on October 31st. Then he shows it to the king.
And even then, they don't swoop in immediately. There's this period of silence, almost 9 days.
9 incredibly tense days. This was Cecil's gamble, letting the plot ripen, as the sources say. They deliberately waited.
Why? What was the goal of waiting?
They wanted to catch the conspirators red-handed, in the act, with the gunpowder, under Parliament. They needed undeniable proof, maximum shock value.
This wasn't just crime prevention, it was stage management.
Absolutely. Remember, King James wasn't universally popular. He was Scottish, seen as an outsider by many in the English establishment. There was anti-Scottish feeling.
So foiling a huge Catholic plot to blow everyone up
Casts James as the hero. The king, saved by God's providence, the wise ruler who deciphered the cryptic letter, which James later claimed he did. It unites the Protestant nation behind him, silences critics, and gives him the perfect justification for even harsher anti-Catholic laws.
It was a massive political win waiting to happen, but only if they played it right.
They needed the drama, the near miss, the public unveiling of monstrous Catholic treachery. Quiet arrests wouldn't achieve that. They needed Fawkes in the cellar.
And the plotters themselves, they knew about the letter by this point, didn't they? Tresham warned them Monteagle had gone to Cecil.
Yes, they knew the authorities had been alerted, but they made a fatal miscalculation. They hoped the warning was too vague, too ambiguous to be taken seriously, maybe dismissed as a hoax.
Fawkes himself went down to check the cellar, found nothing disturbed.
And they convinced themselves to push ahead. They clung to the hope that they hadn't been truly discovered. They were walking right into Cecil's carefully laid trap.
Utterly unaware they were actors in a play Cecil was directing.
Precisely. The final act was about to begin on Cecil's terms.
So Monday, November 4th, the day before Parliament is due to open. The government finally makes its move, but it's cautious.
Deliberately so. The first search, conducted in the afternoon, was intentionally casual, led by the Lord Chamberlain, the Earl of Suffolk, and crucially, he brought Lord Monteagle with him.
Reinforcing that public story of Monteagle being the key.
Exactly. They wander through the vaults, seemingly just doing a routine check. They find Fawkes, still calling himself John Johnson, standing guard over this massive pile of firewood and coal.
And Fawkes plays it cool.
Very cool. He says the fuel belongs to his master, Thomas Percy. Suffolk and Monteagle accept this and just leave.
They just left him there, knowing Percy was involved.
They absolutely left him there. This was the masterstroke. Mentioning Percy's name, Percy was a known Catholic militant already under suspicion, confirmed everything for them. But arresting Fawkes then might have caused chaos. Maybe he panics, tries to light the fuse early.
They needed him calm, still in place, ready for the final reveal.
They were baiting the trap with their own apparent lack of concern, letting him think he'd gotten away with it.
Until midnight.
Around midnight, the second search party arrives. This one is serious, led by Sir Thomas Knivet, a magistrate. They find Fawkes, not in the cellar this time, but just leaving it.
And he's dressed, ready to run.
Exactly. Cloak, hat, boots, spurs, ready for a quick getaway after lighting the fuse. And crucially, he's carrying slow matches and a pocket watch, presumably timed for the explosion.
He's caught red-handed.
Absolutely. Knivet has him arrested immediately. His men storm the cellar, heave aside the firewood and coal, and there they are. 36 barrels of gunpowder. The game is up.
Fawkes is taken straight to the king, apparently still defiant.
Initially, yes. Still using the name John Johnson, admitting nothing except regret that the plot failed. King James was apparently struck by his nerve, calling it Roman resolution.
But that resolution wouldn't last long under questioning. Meanwhile, what happened to Catesby and the others?
As soon as news of Fawkes' arrest spread, those still in London knew it was over. Catesby, Percy, the Wright brothers, and others fled north, back to the Midlands.
Still hoping to trigger that Catholic uprising, kidnap Princess Elizabeth.
That was the backup plan, yes. But it fell apart instantly. The news reaching the Midlands wasn't of a successful explosion and revolution. It was of a failed plot, arrests, disaster.
So the local Catholic gentry they hoped would join them.
Wanted nothing to do with it. They saw Catesby and his men as disgraced, doomed fugitives. The rebellion collapsed before it even started. They were isolated, hunted men.
Which leads them to Holbitch House in Staffordshire, and that moment of terrible, almost unbelievable irony.
It's grotesque, isn't it? They're on the run, exhausted, cornered. Some of the remaining gunpowder, probably meant for defense, got wet while crossing a river.
So they try to dry it out.
By spreading it on platters in front of a roaring fire inside the house. An act of sheer desperation or, frankly, stupidity.
You can guess what happens next.
A stray spark ignites the powder. Not a massive explosion like the one planned for Parliament, but a powerful flash fire. Catesby himself is badly burned, along with several others.
The very weapon they plan to use against the state turns on them.
It maims the leader, injured his men, and acts like a giant signal flare, alerting the sheriff of Worcestershire's posse, who are already closing in, to their exact location. Many saw it as divine judgment.
The end comes swiftly after that, November 8th.
The sheriff surrounds Haldry House with about 200 men. There's a short, desperate fight.
And Catesby and Percy?
They refuse to be taken alive. Stand side by side in the courtyard. According to the accounts, a single musket shot hits both of them, mortally wounding Catesby and Percy. A strikingly symbolic end for the two core conspirators.
Their bodies were later dug up, weren't they? And their heads put on spikes outside Parliament.
A final, grisly warning displayed right at the scene of their intended crime.
But Guy Fawkes' ordeal was far from over. He was alive in the Tower of London. And the state needed more than just the man. They needed names, details, a full confession.
He held out for 2 days, refusing to name his co-conspirators, sticking to his story. This defiance infuriated the king.
So, on November 6th, James the Seer himself authorizes torture.
Yes, the warrant still exists. James instructs his interrogators quite chillingly. Start with the gentler tortures, and if those don't work, step by step, you may employ the harsher.
And the gentler methods, manacles, sleep deprivation, they didn't break him.
Apparently not, which almost certainly means they resorted to the rack.
The infamous stretching device.
Designed to inflict agonizing pain, dislocate joints, stretch the body beyond endurance. Fawkes must have endured days of this. His physical resilience was extraordinary, in a grim way.
But ultimately, everyone has a breaking point.
The state's machinery of pain was designed for that. By November 9th, his resistance finally shattered. He started talking.
And the physical evidence of what he went through, it's right there on paper, isn't it? In his signature.
It's the most visceral proof we have. His earlier signature, before the worst of the torture, it's legible, firm, Guido Fawkes.
But the final confession.
Signed after days on the rack, it's barely a signature at all. It's weak, shaky, the letters distorted, trailing off. Just a tremulous, barely coherent scrawl. It's a horrifying historical artifact showing a body utterly broken by state-sanctioned agony.
The state got its confession. The trial followed in January 1606.
Held at Westminster Hall, right there in the complex they'd tried to obliterate. The verdict was never in doubt. All 8 surviving conspirators found guilty of high treason.
And the sentence for high treason was horrific.
The ultimate ritual of state terror, hanged, drawn, and quartered. Designed to inflict maximum suffering and send the clearest possible message.
Can you just briefly outline what that actually involved?
It was gruesome. They were dragged through the streets tied to a wooden hurdle, then hanged, but cut down while still alive, conscious. Then, disemboweled, their entrails often burned in front of them. Finally, beheaded, and their bodies chopped into 4 quarters.
And these body parts were displayed publicly?
Yes, often sent to different cities as a warning. It was theater of cruelty on a grand scale.
Fawkes was scheduled for the last day of executions, January 31st, staged right opposite Parliament in Old Palace Yard.
He was incredibly weak from the torture, barely able to climb the ladder to the gallows, but in a final act, whether deliberate defiance or just collapse.
He jumped or fell.
Sources suggest he launched himself from the ladder just as the noose was being adjusted. The fall apparently snapped his neck.
Killing him instantly.
Yes, sparing him the agony of being consciously disemboweled and mutilated. A small final assertion of control, perhaps, cheating the executioner of the full spectacle.
So the conspirators are dead, the plot utterly crushed. The immediate legacy seems clear. Total state victory.
Absolutely. Spontaneous celebrations, bonfires lit across London on November 5th. And Parliament quickly formalized this in 1606 with the Observance of November 5th Act.
Making it an official annual day of Thanksgiving.
Yes, for the king's miraculous deliverance. But it rapidly became much more than that. It turned into a powerful, state-endorsed, anti-Catholic festival.
Burning effigies.
Exactly. Effigies of Guy Fawkes, often merged with effigies of the Pope, became central to the bonfire night celebrations. Kids would parade these straw guys, chanting "Tenny for the guy," then burn them.
So Fawkes becomes the ultimate symbol of Catholic treachery and failed treason, ritually destroyed every year.
For centuries, this was the narrative. The government's version won completely. Fawkes was the villain, the bogeyman.
But then, much, much later in the 1980s, something really strange starts to happen. The meaning begins to flip.
It's a profound shift. Long after the original religious hatreds had faded, the figure of Guy Fawkes gets repurposed. It starts significantly with Alan Moore and David Lloyd's graphic novel V for Vendetta.
Right. Set in a dystopian fascist future Britain.
And the hero, V, is this anarchist revolutionary fighting against the totalitarian state. And what does he wear?
A mask.
Yeah.
A stylized, smiling, white Guy Fawkes mask.
Exactly. Moore and Lloyd deliberately took the historical figure, stripped away the 17th century religious context, and recast Fawkes purely as a symbol of resistance against an oppressive government.
That's a huge symbolic leap. The guy whose effigy was burned by the state becomes the face of fighting the state.
It's incredible, and this fictional idea exploded into reality, especially after the 2005 film adaptation of the graphic novel came out.
The mask became globally recognizable.
Adopted first by online groups like Anonymous, then by street protest movements like Occupy Wall Street all around the world.
It provides anonymity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But also signals a shared idea.
Instantly. It signifies dissent, anti-authoritarianism, fighting against powerful, centralized structures. It became a global shorthand for resistance.
Which brings us to the ultimate irony.
The profound irony, yeah. The man whose image was burned for over 300 years in a state-sponsored celebration of his defeat is now the internationally recognized face of fighting against the establishment.
What's really fascinating here is you see how effectively the Stuart government leveraged that failed plot. They created a political and religious rallying cry that lasted for centuries.
A total propaganda success in its time, but ultimately they couldn't control the symbol they created.
The mask, the face, somehow transcended the original context.
It outlived the king, it outlived the specific religious conflict, it even outlived the official state-mandated Day of Remembrance, which was eventually repealed. The symbol of failure got flipped into a symbol of defiance.
So, if we try to pull it together, what does this all mean? The initial violence, the plot itself, was clearly born out of that specific context of oppression, desperation, religious conflict.
No doubt. But the image that emerged from it, the face of Guy Fawkes, it got detached from that original motive. It was successively co-opted and transformed.
Shedding the 17th century goal of Catholic restoration to become this sort of universal symbol for challenging power.
The state used torture, the rack, to literally break Fawkes' body and extract his confession, trying to seize absolute control over the narrative forever.
But centuries down the line, you look at those masks in protests worldwide.
And you realize the state ultimately failed to control the meaning of his face. The symbol escaped its cage.
So here's something maybe for you, the listener, to think about. How often do we see this happen? How do contemporary movements take historical failures, failed rebellions, executed revolutionaries, lost causes, and deliberately recontextualize them?
Twisting them, almost, to create a new narrative. A narrative not of failure, but of noble resistance. Using it to rally support against the very powers that claimed victory back then.
The Gunpowder Plot, the failure of 1605, really shows us that the immediate outcome isn't always the end of the story. The long-term battle is often over who gets to define the meaning of that failure.